can you tell if a writer has rushed through the writing of their screenplay?
Right. So a lot of that has to do with the internal logic of the script, the choices the characters are making, and the dialogue that they're saying. Oftentimes, it doesn't reflect how they truly are feeling. Now, I should say that, yes, actions speak more than words, and a character can be saying one thing but really feeling another. And that actually can be very good writing. And not rushed, that can be actually a very nuanced, sophisticated way of developing characters. But you can tell that if, in a way, they're just saying just to get through the scene or to get around a point that might be sticky. Like, for example, if there's obviously an obstacle that we would think, I'm blanking on one right now, but if there's an obstacle in the way and they're just trying to get around it very quickly to get on to the next bit, you can sometimes think that they've rushed through that. I also feel that they haven't thought about the theme thing again. They haven't thought about the message again. They're leaving meat on the bone for situations where the characters could find themselves in, or the story could go, that could explore the theory in the theme in a different way. Perhaps they haven't done enough research on what they're trying to discuss about, or the world that they've created. Maybe they haven't thought of another way that create obstacles for the character. And you know, if you live long enough in the world, you start thinking like, well, wait a second. If you have a character who's, in a hospital, for example, and I've been in a hospital, I'm sure you've been in a hospital, most people have been in a hospital or a doctor's office of some sort, and you have, there's security these days and just security cameras these days, and there's, it's very difficult to just walk into a hospital and go into a certain areas and just access sensitive places. And so, that's just from an action standpoint. You have to think about that. How would a character get from A to B to C to D? And what would they say? And what would they wear? And what would they do? And there's a lot of people there's a lot of obstacles of security guards and nurses and other patients and doctors, and how do you blend in? So that's where I feel like people might rush, is either the character's dialogue isn't, or actions aren't matching how they should really be feeling at that time, which is what I think I was trying to allude to before, along with not exploring all of the aspects that they possibly could to make a script believable and deep and rich. That could even go to, okay, so I had a student of mine. This is a good example of not rushing. I had a student of mine. She was from India, and where she was, there was a lot of these. There was a lot of going off to England or the U.S. or to Europe to get educated and to make a lot of money that you could send back home. Right? It's very similar to here in L.A. People from Latin America doing that, right? So she wrote a script about a woman who was in this situation, who was going to university, but was dancing at night in an exotic club to make the money because her student visa didn't allow her she could only work a certain number of hours, not enough for her living in the UK and also to send back to India. And the way she had set up in the script, that her mother has constantly bugging her, she needed money by a certain day. Okay, so she's dancing in a club, and something happens where the police catch her, and she eventually gets caught by the cops and taken to like the Homeland Security of the UK, right? So you see her in there, and what you find out is, and in every step of the way, all the plot points that she had, all the obstacles that the student had, because we talked about it a lot, was what are all the obstacles that one would go through if you came here from India, you had to get educated, you had to send all this money, and you only could work so many hours, and what would be all the problems that one would have? And one would be losing your job, and another one would be getting, the people that you're renting finding out that this is happening and getting kicked out of your place. So now you're homeless and you got no money and you have student visa. Maybe the university would find out about it and you might get kicked out of that too. And now how are you going to get back home? And then if you go back home, are you going to be seen as like the person who was the last hope who failed? Right. Especially as a woman. So the last shot of it is she goes through and she does all these things happen, and she finds herself in this holding pen with, and they set up these conversations that the mother from home was going. You find out that the money was needed because her brother was on life support.
Oh, wow.
And because they couldn't afford it, they were going to shut it off.
Oh.
Okay, so you have now in this scenario, you have a social commentary, you have all the steps of possible obstacles that this writer researched that could possibly be a problem that some of her friends had, okay? And this was a very real thing. And then she did this actually, it was a short script. This was only like a 12-minute film, maybe short, 10. But it was tense and it was real and it was authentic and it did not feel rushed because she sat down and she thought about every possible beat along the way that could be used and every obstacle that could be used to talk to the message and the theme that she's talking about that deals with this greater world of poverty and a chance at a better life and trying to overcome those obstacles when they're stacked against you.
And so this was, did she make this into a feature or this was always a short? This was
always a short, but what she did, she was talented. So she then used that short and another short she made while she was at the school. And it was something similar. That one was about, I can't remember what the Indian word, the Hindi word for it is, but British or Western, Indian men living in the West will go to India, especially the small rural villages, and they will say that they will marry girls there and then bring them back to the West and hope for a better life and send money back to them. And these are usually maybe undereducated people in the societies. So what they will do is they will marry them in the village. There will be a dowry, which will be most of the money that this family has. The man will go back to, say, London and say, okay, I'm going to get us a place and then I'll send tickets for you so you can fly there. And then they disappear.
Oh, wow.
They never hear from him again. And the woman, the girl in the village, is now outcast. She's a disgrace. So now she's got that hanging over her head the whole time.
Right.
This had happened. These were common stories that she knew of all the time. So she essentially did a short film of that situation.
Wow.
And in doing so, all the, getting on a ticket, flying over there. She flies up, she shows up, she has to go find this guy. She doesn't know anybody. And she has all the steps that she thought about, all the steps that one would have to go to, all the obstacles that one have to do. And what do you do when you finally confront this person who basically is like, I don't know you, right?
Wow.
And that sort of thing. Between those two films, okay, she had these two scripts and shorts that got into film festivals and whatnot. She then went back to India and she started making movies there, features.
Wow.
And she had lots of ideas that were all socially conscious things, so that problems that women were facing in India, or that underrepresented communities, from various places of India were going through, and sort of, maybe fish out of water stories where, a traditional person from Mumbai might be going into one of these communities and, dealing with something. Yeah.
Right, and the sense of you don't actually really have a home because you're not welcome here, but then you're also not welcome
there,
back where you quote unquote came from.
That's right.
And that feeling of being kind of without a country, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, you're an undereducated person living. You've spent all your money to fly 10 hours to the UK, to London. You don't know anybody. You don't barely speak the language. How do you get by? How do you do that when your family has disowned you? Now you're here. This is your last shot.
Right.
And how do you know? And then you could see how that could be developed into a TV series. Like, how does this woman then survive in the UK if she can't get back? In fact, you can see how her first film and this film could very much link up together in a certain way.
Right. And keeping the secret, that you don't have your papers are not in order, your visa's expired or whatever it is.
Right.
You don't have a visa, yeah.
Right. What is she going to, she might not have enough money to get back, or she did get back, then what's the life she has when she gets back? And those sort of like real world conundrums. The one thing that she did, and this would be useful, is when you have these social causes or social concepts, it's very easy to just hammer the social cause, okay? But it needs to be entertaining to a certain point. It's got to have a thriller element to it in this case, or a drama element to it in this case. And one of the things I told her, or we did, I and the other lecturers, were structure it as if it was a thriller or a drama, a thriller, like Traffic, or like 23 grams.
Oh, yeah. That one with Naomi Watts.
Something like that, where that it was like that. So if you can structure it like that, you, as Steven Soderbergh said, you hide in the genre.
Okay.
Okay, so you get out what you need, you get your message out, and through all the beats of the story and through the characters, and the characters can also, that she meets could be forces of antagonism to represent the institutions or the problems that she would face, or that would represent greater problems on higher levels.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's fascinating, because the stakes are so high, and then she wouldn't know who to trust.
Right.
And since, since the last 20 years, the paranoia, the fear of the other.
Of the other, absolutely.
And all just backs against the wall. And the stigma of working in a club, or a dowry that's gone, awry, or I don't know what the terminology would be, but yeah, there's a stigma.
Yep. And also, you said the other from her entering the other, and or the other being here, but the other goes the other way, goes both ways. She sees the UK as the other.
Sure.
Right, and the UK sees her as the other, and right. where those two things collide, that's usually where drama leads. Those ironies is usually where drama lies. That's usually where you get a lot of tension, right? And that's where you can get great. Stories.